This is Jason Anderson, Chairman of the Killingly Town Council, and we're calling this special Town Council meeting to order. It is currently 7:02 p.m. on February 7th. For roll call purposes, all council members are in attendance, except for Mr. Catula, who is absent with notification. Item 3 on the agenda, we have no interviews. We'll move on to item 4, citizen statements and petitions. Did we have any comments submitted?
No public comment was submitted for the meeting.
Okay, thank you. We have nothing for old business, so we'll move on to item 6. New business, meeting with Economic Development Commission and staff liaison Jill St. Clair. Welcome, thank you for coming. Thank you for taking the time out of your evening to join us.
Good evening. There's a Bill Chan chair of the EDC. Probably we can hear, right? Everybody can hear.
Well,
they need to
because
record
we're recording, it's got to be, I got to get the microphone set up.
And I'm Todd Cook, I'm the assistant chair.
Vice chair. Promoted tonight.
Promoted.
Same day.
Jay Lorette, alternative.
Jill St. Clair, Economic Development Director.
And for those of you who may be watching or listening, just to let you know, we are experiencing some technical difficulties with feedback. We're trying to straighten out right now. We will proceed as soon as we get that addressed.
Say 5 minutes in, we're already taking a break. We're doing good.
Okay. That seems more like it, I think.
Hello? Yeah, better. Much better. Okay.
All right.
Sound bad? Okay. So we start maybe from talk about our EDC, what we did, so what we look forward.
Okay. So one of the things that we wanted to talk about tonight a little bit is with what we're trying to accomplish, to try to build the community, and development. The school board and us, we don't have a liaison anymore. At one point we did. That was coming to all of our meetings, and so we had some sort of connection to know what the pulse is of what they're doing over there and what we're trying to accomplish with our board here, right, our commission. So we'd like to get somebody back so that we can have that connection and try to, keep that communication flowing the way we should in order to do what we're trying to do and represent the, the community on our side, right? So that's really what I'm trying to see if we can get that back on track and get people helping us out there.
All right, I will have that conversation with the chairman of the Board of Ed. I know they have issues filling the liaison positions. We typically don't have a liaison here from the Board of Ed reporting to us either, but we do have a liaison from the council that's at the Board of Ed meetings.
Yeah, I have that meeting tomorrow night, so I can pass that.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you.
What I would like to address and what we're working on in partnership with the KBA, we've had a lot of ribbon cuttings, but furthermore, we've had our Small Business Academy. We had 3 classes, Joe? 3 classes, and out of those 3 classes, we've had 9 businesses open. One of those businesses did not need a ribbon cutting. It was actually my son who became a contractor, Green Valley Carpentry. But out of the rest of the businesses was Ra-Ra's. That was from the first business academy that we held. And there's another one scheduled coming up soon in March. So that will be 10 businesses that we have from our incubating Small Business Academy, which we're super proud of.
That's awesome.
Final word? No. Go home? No. Life is short, so gotta be laugh and enjoy your life, okay? So I never went for council, a town council, because, I gotta go home 7 o'clock for dinner. I late, yeah. Couple minutes late, excuse, traffic. Traffic is killing me, okay? I would like to say that thank you all, I know that our council, say, doesn't, that's not a full-time job. So do we, right? Not a full-time job, not paid job. But yeah, we do love killing me. So we put a lot of time, effort in. We gotta give the credit to past, former chair, Dale, Mark, so many years, sit on the, commission, so committee, so. I would like to touch it and say the basic and say that, as a council, what you want to see EDC represent town of Killiney. How we can grow, because we see that, we've been killing, everybody happy face. So is it that's all, so small business, or we want to see the retention for the, business in here, for many, many years. So we all deal with the, tough time, last 3 years, so what we going to do with that? They maybe need, some hand to do the, better job. That's the one thing. 39 years live in town of Killiney. I think that's some, that's a, the better report card than everybody else, so I'm here, so, nothing's perfect. But from small town now we grow as a population-wise, industry park, all the small business, and we see the, Killiney Common. So that is a time step by step. So we gotta watch it. What's it, the change with the time. Now it's I'm the realtor, look forward to retirement, so now it's what is the next step to, expand, town of Killiney? Number one is a business, housing, affordable housing. So do we need, to expand the sewer pan? That is almost a fully occupied, right? So as I know, but I smell that every single day. Go home and come out, drive by. I live down the road, okay? Not too far away from there. But, that's a part of the Killiney benefit. If you have a commercial or business, you do need city sewer, city water. Try to say that I never say, negative, about, say that what we don't have. Talk about what we have. What we have is say that, say convenient. Small town convenient, say that Killiney Common, we should appreciate that, someone turn on the light on and then we can shop there. Teaching math, right? Okay. My wife can spend a couple hours there, so, yeah. And that's okay, we less argue. She happy? Happy wife, happy family, so that learned from the hard way, that over 40-year marriage, so that's a good learning, right? And another part is we think about it is community college, Last Green Valley. We do have, something is unique in the town of Killiney. This morning we attended, the commercial realtor meeting in town of Plainfield. We shared, what we have in Killiney. Also, thank you, Joe. Director, attend the meeting. Also, Thompson, Putnam, Plainfield. We all come together and see that what we can do, what is happening, your labor time. So they also say, "Oh, I wake up already. Don't call me." Come on, Come on. Yeah. I know that. Yeah, I know that. I host share with you, I host a long meeting in the Lion Cup, Danielson Lion Cup in Haynes Restaurant. Gary O there, and then 7 to 9 o'clock until 10 o'clock. They say that you break the record. Get out here. I'm sorry, I do love the community. Believe it or not, I live here longer enough than my original Hong Kong. Okay, I live in Hong Kong is a 20-some year, and then here is a much longer. So the point is, say, I would like to put on the floor is say that, you are the citizen of the town of Killiney. You won for the position like today you are. But what is the next? If you are not on the position, what you can do, or you on the position, what you can do better job. What you see that. So we share that and say that, it doesn't matter where we come from, but we want to see the next 10, 20 year Killiney. You sell Killiney, how you going to sell it? Right? I'm a good salesperson, so you can tell. Don't keep going. No, see, I think that somehow, we always talk about budget as a school system is a bigger expense. But, nothing's a come for free. Nothing's a come for free. What we can do is say that, I hope we have a better opportunity to retain the younger adults stay in the town of Killiney. And then, think about the senior community, they're growing because they don't want to move to the south. Their family here, they come back. So how we going to treat with them? You say that, okay, here is an activity we do have. So that is a good thing about it, the balance. Everything's a talk about balance, the job, where we live, and then we can afford the tax bill. Okay, but that's all about, so thank you.
Thank you. I know one thing that I had brought up before was looking into developing a vision committee where basically bring the council together, different members from different boards and commissions I know we have the Plan of Conservation and Development, but as far as having a vision for what we want, how we want to see Killingly, as you said, 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. I think if we can pull that together and bring in as many of the interested parties as we can, so we have business owners, so we have residents, so we have town staff, board commission members, council members, to see where we want to see the town. Then I think once you have a plan in place as far as this is the vision we want to reach, this is the type of town we want Killingly to be, or we want it to remain. And that way, if you have a plan in place, it's easier to reach your goals rather than just going, all right, well, this is going on. All right, let's react to that. We've got these businesses that are looking for places. All right, well, if we look at, all right, this is the type of businesses we want to bring in, where can we fit them? What can we do? Whether it's expanding the industrial park or putting in a commercial park. And then, as you talked about, expanding infrastructure to support those areas. I know one thing I've heard from a lot of people is they want to keep the rural nature to Killingly without losing that rural nature, but still develop the town. And from my opinion, that is something that I think would be critical, is to make sure we're not taking away from Killingly as we develop further, but also know that we really don't want to become stagnant and not have any growth in town either. Because as we know, with inflation and everything, the cost of everything goes up and up, and unless the town's growing, you have to raise your mill rate to accommodate for the additional cost of everything. Whereas if there's growth in town, you can balance that off and maintain a stable tax rate, and that in itself draws more people in, whether it's residents, whether it's businesses. Basically working to make Killingly a place where people want to move to, people want to stay that are already here, where new businesses want to come in, and where we retain the businesses that are here.
Your timing couldn't be more perfect. NECOG right now is in charge of doing a strategic plan survey for the region, and so your input would be very valuable. Mary and I have decided that I am going to be aggressively helpful in trying to list things in this. It's called a SEDS report, to make and you need that to apply for federal and state grants. It has to go back to that SEDS report. So So far on the report, the wastewater sewer treatment feasibility study. The best time to start investing in infrastructure is right before you need it, because these projects take a good decade to get off the ground. So that would be vital for the health of our current stakeholders, but any other sort of growth that we want to capture. So that I put that on there. We need a regional housing feasibility needs assessment that's different than an affordable housing plan. That is a document that's comprehensive for the region, and then you can take that report and take it to financiers. Without that report, they'll say, prove to us. We hear the numbers, but what's the real saturation? What is the real need of housing stock in the area? So I've requested that for the region. Improvement on workforce mobility needs. We all know in rural America, the bus system does not accommodate the workforce or our industrial park. So we have new platforms that we could start to utilize. There's an example in Boston, it's called the Last Mile. So with your bus pass, you get an Uber voucher. So it's built into it. That program, it's subsidized. But if the last bus ends at 5, you don't get out till 7. What do? You can get to work, but you can't get home. And the cost of transportation is a barrier to employment. When we did our industrial park transportation feasibility study, it came back that 16% of our residents do not have enough automobiles to license drivers. The state average is 11%. So that is a gap. Right now, our unemployment rate here in Killingly is a historic all-time low. December, it was 2.9. The state was 3.1. So we still have those barriers. And part of that barrier is also moving housing closer to where our employers are. And that's where you get into brownfield remediation. We have 3 mills that could be redeveloped into housing. But with that comes wastewater. It also comes with infrastructure. So those things I put on that list as well. Regional upgrades to broadband services. We had this conversation recently. It's in the area. They need to make the investment because really it's an innovation economy. And how are we going to compete? And then, the tech-savvy manufacturing, it's changed, it's different. It's how well do you work with the technology? And then finally is the infrastructure to those parcels for industrial and commercial, but they don't have the water and the sewer. So they're not shovel ready, they're not investment ready. It's land. So we're gonna get passed over on those opportunities because the infrastructure's not there. So that's on the SEDS report as well. My personal, and I haven't discussed this yet with anyone, is brand identity for Killingly. Sometimes if you don't define yourself, others will, and sometimes it's negative press by Firestorm. So when I'm out in the world, I always talk about how innovative we are and that what an important place this is in the northeast corner. If you put a pin right in this room and did a 50-mile radius, there are over 5.1 million people. That's important. Stakeholders know how important this corridor is. So those are the conversations we need to have. Those are the conversations we need to have outside of these rooms to say this is who we are. We have a technical college. We have a VOAG high school with career pathways. I think there's 28 of them. We have a world-class robotics team. I mean, we should be celebrating those and not keeping it a secret. We know about it, but the world should know about it. So your timing couldn't be more perfect. If you can think of anything else that I can be aggressively helpful with NECOG, I will certainly push that to get that on the list.
One thing I know, we do have Owen Bell Park. We do have Furnace State Park and other places. I know younger adults tend to be outside a little more and want to be active rather than the older retired community who usually is home and shopping. Not to stereotype. But if we could develop some type of, or join some type of recreation area that would attract more people, more of the younger adults. The people that grew up in Killingly that are getting older and try and get them to stay in town rather than move out of town. Just to have more to appeal to a wider demographic.
Oops. That's really high, isn't it? The Brickyard update, that should be starting soon? Hopefully.
Oh, yes, please. So the way the town acquired that parking lot was in several pieces and lot alignments, so we're still working through the title part of it to submit to the state, but we're very close. And once they check off that box, we can take it out to schematic design. So we anticipate May, we should be able to capture our vendor or whoever's going to help us oversee the project and start working on it.
Because I think that would go, because that's almost an incorporation of
Mhm.
everything that you just were talking about. We're trying to
Yeah.
make it multi-generational.
But the big issue is
That's your mic.
money. And I don't know, maybe now, I don't know if there seems to be a lot of money, the feds have money, the state has money, but are they making it available to us? Not without going through super hurdles. I mean, sometimes, yeah, you can see it way over here, but it's so far out. And then you can't vision that far out. It's like it's, or you have to have a lot of seed money to get into something like that. Maybe that might be another thing. But I mean,
Disagree.
everything we're looking at, expansion of the sewer plant, that's big, big dollars. We don't have enough space.
Right. So that's a project that, Jen, I don't know if you can, these mics are really loud. What? Let me try that again. Okay. It's getting a little better. It's really. I'm going to try this one. This one's better. So, that's why we're looking at getting the feasibility study started for the expansion of the wastewater treatment, because there is federal dollars available in the infrastructure, specifically geared towards wastewater treatment. And so if we are able to pull together that feasibility or do that evaluation of what do we actually need, what is our current loading levels, and what would be, where would we need to go for expansion? Because our wastewater treatment plant isn't just Killingly, it's regional, it's Brooklyn too. So if that plant is, reaches capacity, it not only ties the hands of Killingly's growth, it also ties the hands of Brooklyn and potentially Pomfret, because Pomfret is also connected with one facility. So it's really a regional plant. So it really fits well in the model of the current federal funding. So we have been in conversations with being able to position ourselves for accessing that. I've already had a conversation with Joe Courtney on being able to position for federal funding because that's really where you're gonna have to go for federal fund. You have to go for federal funding on your wastewater treatment. So, but you're right. We have to get through that feasibility study. We have to get those initial investment studies done first in order to really be in the pipeline to receive, to benefit from those federal monies.
Now, if we have to have some seed money, is that something we need? How do we
So,
budget? Is it
we're-
in our budget that we have to put money, or can you use the Economic Development Fund?
So for the wastewater treatment plant, that would be the WPCA. And so we're looking at we're likely going to be looking at going to the WPCA to utilize some of their potential capital funds that they have available to work through getting that kick-started. But as we go through, if there's other, investment opportunities, we may seek funding through availability with the Economic Development Trust. A large portion of that trust fund right now has been dedicated to the Brickyard project because that was a priority project. So you know, there's not a lot of funds remaining left undedicated until we get through that project with the Economic Development Trust. That over time would come back as we, you know, get through other sale of other properties and other projects. But, we would look at what is available for funding. For this specific one of the WPCA, we're going to be seeking funding through the WPCA.
Is there a time frame? I mean, are we in a constrained time frame, or is there?
It is a shortened time frame, although it's not a specific time frame at this point, right? So clearly, we would like to get that feasibility study kicked off in the next, you know, short duration of time over this spring, so we can then leverage ourselves to be able to submit in through the summer into fall for potential federal funding in for design in through construction. But that, you know, so there is, it all stages out in timing. It's not like we have to have it done by, you know, April 30th, right? There's not a set deadline on that. But we do want to, there is urgency around it.
And then, like you're saying, we have Brooklyn. Is Brooklyn going to be in this mix? I mean, they're actively
So,
giving us material.
Brooklyn has a contract with us.
Like Pomfret, it's there, but
Right.
that plant is
So-
dead right now, so.
We have a contract with Brooklyn. And so Brooklyn pays us according to that contract, right? So just like we have a contract with Frito-Lay, and they pay in accordance to their contract. So they participate in investments in the plant based on their contract language. And so they are really based on the flows and the loads that they deliver to the plant.
But I said, but when we're going through this feasibility study, do we invite Brooklyn to the table? Is Frito-Lay going to be participants at
Well,
the table?
we evaluate what they deliver, what comes through, and what's within their contracts.
But I mean, are they buying, like Brooklyn, are they buying capacity? You know,
A small
something-
marginal
how does
amount.
that play out? I mean.
Yeah, that's
we
in the
charge them-
contract.
Yeah, we charge them what they deliver to us, but
Right.
are they buying, I guess that's.
Maximum
buying
capacity,
or
yes,
whatever?
they're buying capacity, and that is factored in. So you have a maximum capacity that they are allowed to discharge. And so that is factored into the feasibility, so that way we can understand full maximum exposure.
Now, I think I may know what you're trying to get at, Ed, is should we reach out to Brooklyn and discuss with Brooklyn, we're looking into expanding the plant. Do you have intentions on doing further developments in Brooklyn that would require them to feed the plant more
Right, so we
wastewater?
recently just had those conversations because we're just completing negotiations on the extension of their contract. So we've just had conversations around what should their maximum exposure currently be, and where do we think their developments are gonna be, and what kind of developments do we think they're gonna have. But like with every town, even with Killingly, you don't necessarily know what businesses are gonna come knock on your door 3 or 4 or 5 years from now, right? Brooklyn has a whole lot of Route 6, right? There's a whole lot of space on Route 6. So they don't necessarily, nobody has that crystal ball to say, this is what business is gonna show up and this is what their wastewater treatment needs are gonna be, right? So there has to be, there's modeling that can occur, that they can look at, but they look at the zones. What are those areas zoned for? Is it zoned for industrial? Is it zoned for retail? Like, what are they zoned for? Because that will give you an indication of what type of discharge you're potentially going to be facing in that. But that's all part of that feasibility. Yes, we'll have conversations with Brooklyn. Yes, we'll have conversations with Frito-Lay, because Frito-Lay is our largest contributor to the plant. We'll have conversations with them about what do they see in their crystal balls going down the road. But again, that's it's a hard thing necessarily to fully predict.
See, like, Route 6 is sewered all the way, all the way out to Brooklyn Center.
Yep.
So the sewer is already there in place. then as far as Killingly, our industrial park is pretty much full. And then for what you're saying, is if someone looking to come into town, we don't have anything even in concept for, to start looking at where we might go for expansion of an industrial park. So how did that, if we don't have a concept as to what we think we might be looking for,
Well, there are properties, though, that are zoned for commercial that currently do not have infrastructure, and I'm thinking like Rock Ave. There's properties on Rock Ave that are currently zoned industrial that do not have infrastructure to them, right? Could a developer conceivably decide that that's the ideal property for them, and they need to get infrastructure there? Perhaps that's an investment that needs to take place, and that's an area to look at. That's where we would look, first look at what do we have currently zoned that's currently vacant or that's currently not contributing, that would be potential hooks to the system, and how would it potentially expand?
Yes, so no, I don't have a question.
Mike?
I don't have a question, but I would think we have to do Killingly first in terms of the capacity, see how much you have. And then she's working on our personal outbuild. So Brookline would be a second discussion later on. Can they give us any income, right? But Jill is talking about our town.
Yes, we would look at our town, but we also have to recognize that Brooklyn does not have their own wastewater treatment plant. Brooklyn's wastewater treatment plant is Killingly. You're not going to cut off Brooklyn.
No.
And so Brooklyn
Of course.
has to be part of the evaluation.
It already is, but not their outbuild. So her first concern is our 3 mills and our hookups.
Correct. But
And
going
meeting
for the-
our capacity.
Right.
That's only an income situation.
Right, but if you're looking at the federal infrastructure money,
Yeah.
producing it as a regional plant gains you higher priority in gaining that money. If you bring it only as, we're only going to do it for just us, you will be slated off. So presenting it truly as the regional plant that it is and recognizing it as the capacity, in addressing the regional nature of it would rank it much higher in availability for funding.
Yeah, so then Ed is correct with that, should be part of the regional plan. They should be in on that, on their outbuild. Yeah.
Correct.
All right.
Which we would have to have them included in that feasibility study to understand what is really the exposures.
So, do we have an idea of what size expansion we'd be looking at?
No, right now we don't, because we need to do the feasibility study.
Feasibility
That's
study
what it
That's
will,
where it's gonna come out.
yes.
Okay.
And that's part of any grant proposal, is the closer you are to a shovel-ready project, the higher priority. So unfortunately, you need to make the investment in the studies and the feasibility, because they'll say, prove it, prove that you need an expansion in any project. And it's those matching funds. So when you talk about the Economic Development Trust Fund, that has been a great economic development tool for us to have money available and ready so that we can do our match or our in-kind. And we have been kicked off the distressed municipality list, which is actually a good thing and a bad thing. We get higher ranking when we're on there, but we're 3 years off. It looks like we're trending towards staying off the list. So while we have that 2 year, I think we have 2 more years, we can claim that designation. We should be, utilizing that status as much as we can.
To get off the subject of wastewater treatment, because I know this is exciting. I was trying to think of a good way to say that, Bill. I got to say, I do agree with you 100% when you said about retention and trying to continue to attract younger people here, to retain our people here as well. It's one thing that we talk about when at my own personal job, is that younger folks, we're willing to travel. I'm 33. I have no problem. If I have to travel an hour out to Hartford for work, I'll do it. I have no problem with that personally. It's the whole idea of making sure that if we can offer good jobs here, which obviously we're doing something right because our unemployment is pretty low. So I got to say that's a testament to what's going on here in town, and we're working on the factors that affect us here in town. Because obviously there's the external factors that we have no control over. We don't have control over with how the state runs or how the federal government runs, and inflation, things like that. But we're working on those things here. So I got to say that's a great thing. 10 businesses within the last year, which I get excited every single time I see, ribbon cutting. That actually really is, like, I was like, my God, how many are we opening this week there? This is great. So I do have a question, though, when it comes down to this, considering the pandemic and the last few years, do you know how many businesses have we lost any, or?
I haven't kept track of them, but we have had seepage.
Yeah.
We had a ribbon cutting for a yoga studio, but that space will have a ribbon cutting next month. So there has been some turnover. Things have changed, and I don't think they'll ever go back to what we had it before, so office space, that kind of thing. People want smaller retail space. The nature of online shopping, that's here to stay, and it's going to grow. So how do we retrofit those existing commercial triple net parcels? We have to get creative and be nimble enough in our zoning. I think you might be aware from the liaison, the business park, they did a text change amendment to push back the setback. That was a huge barrier. There were 750 feet setback lines, and they pushed it back to 50. Now we can do something. So we sent that up to the state, Advanced CT, and it's currently being listed.
And, again, I think that we're going in the right direction, this mindset of not only how do we grow, but how do we retain. I think that's the two things that we have to look at. And obviously, even our chairman has mentioned, potentially, maybe another park or things like that. Economic development, it's not all on you either. We have our rec department that would look at that kind of stuff. We have other department, WPCA, that looks at their things there, and it's beautiful to see. Bill, I love listening to you, how much you love the town of Killingly, because you recognize the fact that we work together as a team. It doesn't matter, we all have our opinions on everything, but at the end of the day, we're working for the team of Killingly, and that's something I gotta say I really appreciated listening to you say.
Do I get paid?
Yeah, we're gonna add an extra 0.
I would like to say that is a open mind government, policy. Government don't make money; they generate 1 penny, only tax on the dollar, on the property. So think about this, So how we can, promote, town government policy. So open mind, change with time, and then see that some what is a benefit for next generation. Why they gotta stay here? What they gonna do? And then the senior, how they can stay here with the the close family. So a lot of things gotta think about that. So you won't see me 40 years later, right? Okay, so that's all about we all put in our time, and hopefully everything is the best. You see that that's some they stuck with me to say also recognize our director and manager, they always out there to promote town of Killingly, ribbon cutting, with the business community. So Killingly, the business association, also some chamber of commerce, so Betty from Northeast Chamber of Commerce. As I say, I was a 9-year board member of the chamber, so they look around, their regional is much bigger, but you're lucky they, the headquarters, the office in Killingly. So we do have, nearby, health department, the Campbell Hospital. So if we look into that, so town of Killingly maybe someday, somehow, the couple 100,000 population, and that is, you got to prepare for that, because the land is less and less. You got to build up. Like Hong Kong is saying, they bought it up last year. 54. 300 square feet or 400 square feet, that's talking about $800,000 US dollar. How can you afford it? You're going to make whole family chip in. You got to do what you got to need to do, so. But we live really comfortable here. But, say the land is getting less and less. So we got to have a good plan, strategy. How we going to do all the business, retain all the business, who pay the bill. Also, I say don't live in Killiney.
And I think that's where we really need to remember to continually look at the plan of conservation and development. The Planning and Zoning Commission works really hard on developing that and engaging the community in developing what that plan is and really creating those action items to be implemented over that 10-year period. And so many times communities take that plan of conservation development and they put it on a shelf. They never look at it again, right? And it really needs to be part of things that we do all the time when we're trying to make decisions. How is it reflective of that plan of conservation and development? Because it's not just about, that's not just talking about land use, it's also talking about economic development. It is talking about our schools, it is talking about our recreation, it is talking about all those other things. And that should be part of stuff that we are looking at on a regular basis.
If you think about it, every business, try to sell the business. If a EDC is salesperson for the town of Killiney, how are we going to sell the town of Killiney? Band name, right? So that's say some idea, So change always is a change because no control. Somehow it's within the territory, so try to do the best we can. And compared to neighborhood, so how we can do. I don't know, is it borrow money is a bad thing? We borrow a lot of money, but still, so we still gotta expand to keep the business that come in. So you gotta compare, the balance there, so I don't know, say I don't have a crystal ball, but we try to do our best.
The other thing we're talking about housing, and housing near where people work. Well, we had that many years ago. Rogers, the mill, the little village. Blueville, the mill, the little village. Attawagan, the mill, everything was right. Now that's pretty much gone. But then I'll take the exception, the grief that Mary probably gets and the calls from the lake with issues from the industrial park. So you got higher end housing, you got industry, and they are like this. I just, I catch that all the time. So, or is there a specific type of housing with a specific type of what's the word that I want?
I'm waiting here.
Some type of man, whatever.
Accessibility.
How do the two match together so they don't, they have their place and they don't encroach on each other? How do we match something like that?
So we need all types of housing. When we did the affordable housing stock, we learned that we have single occupants in 3 and 4 bedroom houses because it's affordable. Their mortgages are paid off, so it's just taxes and insurance, and that's affordable. So it's more affordable than going into an apartment or an elder facility. So we really need to think about that age in place housing, age in community housing, as well as, the college student who's laden in student loan debt, to families who want to relocate here, and even upscale retirement homes. I mean, Westview is filled. So it's a testament to the kind of housing we need. So when we talk about what exists and what our pain points are as a community is some of those brownfields. And there is funding, historic funding, that's come down the pipeline. But once again, you have to have your phase 1s, your phase 2s to be in that lineup to receive that funding. So we had applied for a 2021 EPA targeted assessment grant for Blueville, They are just starting their work in 2 weeks to do their assessments. So once we have those assessments, behind it, I wrote a multi-use EPA grant. So then we can roll into that grant process, but it may be 2 years out. We're looking at, we entered into the Yukon Brownfield Assessment Grant Program. I have students coming out on Thursday to look at Bailey Hill to see what we can do with that one. We've re-engaged the EPA with Prim Mill. And so they're in conversations with Mr. Simpson and Prim to see what they can do to start pushing that forward. So it'll probably be mixed-use housing, or, some of it'll be market rate and some of it'll be affordable. But it's
trying
what
to
comes.
trying to put housing on a contaminated industrial site, that's a costly.
Well, it won't be contaminated when it's done. That's the goal.
And another thing that you have to consider, that has to be considered in this, is the accessibility also to the work areas. And one of the things that we learned in the transportation plan evaluation that we did was the connectivity. So sidewalks or bike lanes, how could somebody that doesn't have a vehicle, doesn't have access to a vehicle, how do they get to work, right? And so is there ways that we can, in those major pathways, is there ways that we can invest in sidewalk infrastructure or bike lane infrastructure in order to be able to create that pathway or access pathway for those that are potentially going to be in those developments, or that are currently existing. We know that there's, we have a density population in the Danielson Borough area that is trying to get to the industrial park. They may or may not have the reliable transportation to do so. They may be able to be more comfortable walking up Maple Street in order to do that. There's not sidewalks all the way up Maple Street, and it gets narrow, and the traffic is very fast. That was one of the areas that was identified in our transportation evaluation for the industrial park, was connectivity down Maple Street. Does the town look to invest in installing sidewalks all the way the length of Maple Street in order to get that connectivity to your industrial park area, in order for somebody to be able to make that commute in a safe manner? And then they can reliably get to work, and they can reliably get home. So you have to look at the walking distance and the bike ride distance, right? Those are two different matrix that you would use in identifying what type of infrastructure you would potentially look to incorporate in the areas. But as we know, sidewalks, that can be a heavy infrastructure lift when the sidewalk itself, but also, making sure that we have appropriate easements along the stretch of roadway that you have to get it done on. And there's a number of topographical, geographical constraints as well. We have, very significant drop-offs on the side of the road, and, how does that all play in? So there's a lot of planning that would have to go into that type of work as well. Those are all additional things besides just identifying where does the housing go. It's how do you connect that housing, and it's not necessarily putting the housing right next to the industrial. It's also creating the natural pathway for somebody to be able to get from the housing to there.
Now,
In that light, sidewalks on Maple Street. What do you do at the lake? So, because I have a house on the lake, sidewalk goes in, I lose square footage of my property. I've got to give up so much.
You don't want the land.
Yeah, but either way, the lot is so small, and I'm seeing houses that they can't even park their vehicle between the house and the road. If they go a little too fast plowing snow, that snow's on top of the vehicle. You have the railroad, which the railroad owns a significant, I think the railroad even owns part of Maple Street up there. Maybe we look at new industrial, site something and build it out from scratch. Trying to take something and what you have existing is, then you
So-
could plan it a little bit better.
Well, you do also have to recognize, though, that our our existing industrial park is there. We have existing industrial park users, and we have employees that are trying to get there. And so, maybe we, try and funnel it into a different route, but those are all about strategic planning. How does it work, right? And what side of the road does it go on, or does it go down that road, right? That's all part of that planning, but you can't just ignore that you have an existing industrial park that has, thousands of employees at it. People still need to get to work, and there's still a demand for people to be able to get safely to and from. So that was just an example,
No,
not
I
saying that we're
understand.
looking
No,
at
no, I
doing that
understand.
tomorrow, but I mean,
No,
that's
yeah.
just an example, right?
But
Of
that's
how does
best
it
route, if you're gonna
happen?
access for the industrial park, Maple Street, is it traffic, pedestrians, everything all mixed in? And,
And there are constraints along that
many,
roadway.
many- Right, that's why I threw out.
There are
okay,
constraints.
We're looking at, maybe if we're gonna start looking for additional industrial park acreage or whatever, well, okay, industrial, maybe we can plan some housing on the outskirts of that particular parcel, so we're not going as far, but then again, like the NECOG transit, that's not that convenient either, it's there, but it's,
Right.
that's a tough go.
So
If
if we,
it's snowing out, they don't run, people have to go to work, I mean, it's like,
so if we can create density, housing density, so for example, Blueville Mill is 3.1 miles from the industrial park, and we've created density there. The bus route can go there, or they can start a ride share. And we're starting to have the conversation with our stakeholders, our industrial park stakeholders. They're willing to start making that investment. Like Automatic Rolls is a privately owned company. They had this conversation because they're looking for workforce. And if transportation is a barrier, they're willing to get involved in that, in removing that barrier. And that's almost like the old mill model. And so they realize they have to get a little bit more creative instead of stealing each other's employees from each other with 50-cent, raises, is really creating a better ecosystem for all. So they're starting to have those conversations.
That's a good thing, if they have skin in the game, getting their employees to their facility, that's a big plus.
Right, but we need to still move the housing closer because they're not going to go out 26 miles to grab employees or go up to Worcester where some of them are coming from. If we can move the housing closer and simultaneously take care of some environmental injustices with these brownfield sites, it's a win-win proposition.
Now, I want to, sorry,
I gotta, go ahead.
go Andy.
I have a simple question. What is the average wage for Killenly?
I would have to pull, I don't have that data in front of me, but if you go to the state of Connecticut and go to town profiles, it'll have Killingly, and you can flip over the back page. It'll tell you the average wage, and it'll tell you what industry, per industry. So I can tell you manufacturing and transportation, warehousing are top performing industries with an average salary of 63,000.
I
Because
can
it
include
just-
that in the manager's report for next week.
I'll look. I
Mhm.
mean, everything's on the internet too. It just popped into my head. I didn't know if you actually knew. It seems like we're regressing if we have to provide people a ride to work. Because when we were all younger, we made sure that we could get to work.
Right.
So it just seems like, okay, so we're gonna invest money in sidewalks, which I think in other terms are a great idea, but for the purpose of walking to work, I just,
Well, it's a chicken
don't-
and the egg story. How do you get a job if you don't have transportation? How do you get a car if you don't have a job? So if
I
there's
don't know,
ways.
we've survived all this time, so I
Right.
think it's, people
and-
need to figure that out, right?
We don't complain to you.
And then what's it just gonna be a bigger burden on the taxpayer, right?
Well, I think it's a shared lift.
No, I think
It's for
a
the
bigger burden on the
stakeholders.
taxpayer, to be honest with
Yeah,
you.
but also the stakeholders are willing to get involved. I mean, it's a complicated problem, and they need workforce, so.
Right.
Like you said, everyone has to have skin in the game for the greater good of the community.
So what I was going to ask is, now that NTE Energy basically does not exist at this point, have we contemplated looking at the possibility of putting residential where that had been proposed to go, considering the proximity to the industrial park? You are right there. I mean, I don't know if that's something that's been looked into.
That's all still private, that's all privately owned
Yeah,
property.
it's still privately owned property.
I'd
but
have to
it-
look and see what the zoning is
Yeah, it's-
for that.
How many acres is that?
I believe 80,
It's a lot.
87 acres
it
between
is.
the two parcels.
Mhm.
And if it's residential, I don't know if that might be rural residential
I
there.
don't know, I'd have to look at the zoning.
I should know, I live right up the road. And then you also have, well, by putting it there, then they're not having to go from over by the horse farm down that way. But it does have a very close proximity. The other thing, I don't know if it's ever been looked into, staying within the proximity of the industrial park, is the EPA Superfund site on Cotton Bridge Road. That's a fairly large parcel. If that was going to be converted to residential, it's right along the river as well. So, I mean, that's another parcel. I don't know if that one's been looked into. My understanding is that it is still it's privately owned. But my understanding is EPA still hasn't made a decision on that one, what they're going to do with it, as far as whether it needs to be remediated, whether it's going to be just left, or what's going on with that. But thinking of proximity to the industrial park, both of those, especially the one that's on the S-turns, that's right there. And I mean, it's also the fact that you have the Wyndham Land Trust in the back. So if it is younger people that they want to get out, they're close to work, and they have an area where they can go hiking, they can go walking right along the river. That might be something worth looking into, especially the fact that they were already considering selling, they already planned on selling that property anyway. So,
Well, that's what I was gonna get at, something like that. You look at the Cotton Bridge parcel, now we have river trails, we have a river trail here that's right on the river. Then you have the land trust north of that.
yeah.
That's a potential, you're saying you wanna invite the younger people that want, you know, you can have a bike path versus a walking path. They want biking. And then some of them I've seen, and they wanna really move on their bikes. They don't wanna have so much interference with the pedestrian traffic and the bike traffic and the car. None of the three get along with each other. It's a conflict. But, I mean, that's something that I think that, even the NTE, the property, that could loop. I mean, for talking about from scratch, I mean, yes, we want to do something with these little mill sites because
Yeah.
they're a problem. But I'm not sure if housing is, that's a, when you're looking at, like Prim's, that was the mill and the housing was all around it.
Well, I know Norwich, and Jill can attest to this, Norwich has done that with some of their mills where, if you look at, what is it, Fall Mills? Yep,
Yeah.
yep. And the Thermos on Laurel Hill was another one as well that became condos. So I mean, that's,
And
yeah,
Central Village?
yeah, Central Village.
A lot of the times, the mill sites with the brownfields remediation, many times capital stack housing becomes an attractive development option for those with the available additional funding sources are. And so housing can be a great alternative.
I mean, and if it's a big enough mill, I mean, putting in some small businesses
Yeah.
for convenience purposes.
Yeah.
That's a Putnam one.
Yeah, Putnam
Talking
just
about-
did that as well, yeah.
That's what Bailey Hill was actually originally slating to do.
So I just had a couple quick questions, and I'll ask them both at the same time, and then you guys I can be done with this. So, do you have any idea of the density in the Ballaville Mill? Because I live there. close by there. And then the other thing is I'm trying to get a picture of how this regional process works and how we would follow along, because, Killingly has a specific character, and I wouldn't want, I wouldn't want a regional plan or a plan coming from Hartford. Like, we really don't like when Hartford comes into our business, some of these decisions being made where we don't get our character expressed. So I want to know, what does that look like, those meetings, and how do we follow along?
You want to answer the Blueville one, and I'll take
I'll
the
start with
SADS
the
one?
Blueville Mill. Back in 2006, it was pre-approved for up to 74 condominium units on the property, and then the mill development was 51 units. So someone would have to go back in, do a new development plan if they wanted to change the footprint, the infrastructure.
What does that mean, 130, or is it, I didn't quite get the...
It was 74
Yeah,
condominium units on the parcel,
okay,
and then 51 units in the mill itself.
okay.
And what was the rehab rate? What was it? Was it like $40 a square foot as opposed to in a mill like over triple that?
Yeah, a mill redevelopment project is probably about $350 a square foot. And part of that capital stack would be remediation, brownfield remediation funds, and then there's new tax credits. So corporations who, instead of paying capital gains, they can put it into a fund, and these developers can go in and apply for that money to put into preservation. There's also federal and state historic tax credits. So you want to reduce the price per square foot about 150. I think new housing is, what, 150 right now?
New house,
Yeah,
single house,
yeah,
250 to up
right.
without land
That's the total cost, right? You're talking about per square foot.
per square foot.
Per square foot, it's a little different.
Yeah, so new construction's up there, and that's what's driving up the price. So it has to be a capital stack with an investor, historic credits, and whatever skin in the game that we can bring as a community, and that we're the vessel to get the brownfield funding for these projects. A private investor can't go and apply for these grants. It has to be a public entity.
Your question with regards to the SEDS. Yeah, so with regards to the SEDS, NECOG will be continuing to hold public hearings on that, and I can share with you what they've given for a draft schedule. They haven't announced any new dates on that, but we can give you the schedule. They're looking at not issuing the report until sometime in the fall timeframe. We have developed, Jill has given you the list of the priorities of what we would be putting in for Killingly specific, but Killingly, each town in the SEDS has a specific outline of what we are focusing on, if you will, for our economic development, right? And so those are the items that we know in order for us to be eligible for grant funding, like with the wastewater treatment. We know for the federal infrastructure money, it has to be identified in the regional SEDS in order for them to tick the box and for us to be able to be eligible for the federal infrastructure money.
Are those meetings on camera? Like, can you watch them later, or you have to go?
I believe that they usually record them. I think that you can I think they still do them in a hybrid format where you can join them online or you can be in the room, but I'll have to check and see what their schedule is, but I'll share that with all of you. And then, clearly if there's any additional ones to add in, definitely let me know. Again, I'm working closely with Jill on that one. Jill's been our point one to be able to attend the meetings in person and be very active in communications with the organizers at NECOG on this. And then I'll be having further conversations with John Filchek as we get through the line on that development. There's also, I think, is there studies still? Is there online jot form still? Their survey? Okay. They were doing a survey at one point in time, but I don't know if they closed the survey, if they still have it open, or if they were even really accepting surveys. I'm not really sure what they were doing with that.
Getting back to sidewalks from where you live to your place of work, what is the average walking distance? What are they throwing out as an average walking distance?
Well, when we did the transportation feasibility study, it was noted that the commute time for a resident in Killingly was 26 miles. So we don't have a walking, how far do people walk to get to employment? But that was the average commute time for an employee.
If you have a car or whatever.
Right, right. They did report 1% commuted by walking or biking, 1% of the population.
I think you gotta think about it reasonably, right?
Oh, no,
You know,
that's-
reasonably, if you're walking, you're probably gonna walk maybe 2 miles, right? That's probably about the distance that if you're gonna do it on a regular basis, especially if you're gonna have to do it during, inclement weather and stuff like that. I know my kids, when they worked in a local fast food establishment in Dayville, there was a number of their workers that walked to there, and they would walk from QVCC to downtown Dayville, right? And they walked that every shift, rain, sunshine, sleet, or snow, right? That was what they were doing, right? So you have to think about, reasonably, what would somebody reasonably walk for employment? And, 2 to 3 miles is probably about what you would see for reasonableness, and having them maintain that consistent work.
Biking would be a little further.
Yeah, biking would probably get up to closer to 10 miles.
And even that's a long ride.
Not that long.
I did 22 and a half for a year, one way.
You can,
No, third shift at a fast food place.
it depends on the terrain. It depends on the
Oh,
terrain. If it's a pretty
yeah.
flat terrain, you can do 10 miles lickety-split.
But
If it's
we live in-
hills,
it's
on
New
the other
England.
hand, it's a different story. But yeah, it depends. But probably that 7 to 10 mile range is probably the outskirts of that for biking.
And living on Lake Road, I do see, there are a couple people that I do see that are going back and forth to work on bikes to the industrial park. And I see them on a daily basis. I recognize them and, all right, yep.
Getting back to the wastewater treatment plant expansion. So we would have to have some idea of our industrial expansion, what we're thinking from that. And like the only place we have is Rock Avenue is zoned, that's a sizable partial, that's zoned for industrial. But other than that, there's nothing.
So the feasibility study would review all of our open and available lands that's zoned that could handle commercial or industrial space.
Okay,
So they would go through they would go through the evaluation. So I don't know that I can't ramble them all off
Oh, no,
tonight,
no, I'm
right?
not, I'm not.
I don't have the capacity right now in the brain to do that. So, but that's what the study's for. That's why you have to go through that exercise, because all of that has to be identified, because you have to be able to identify what's an exposure
It's regional.
on a regional basis.
It's a regional.
But
Right.
We're not responsible for the regional, so like, kind of what you were saying, Brooklyn would have to supply us with their study as well as Pomfret,
Well,
right?
so for Pomfret, it's easy. It's one location.
Yeah, okay.
Pomfret's one location. It's one building. It's the old
Brooklyn's
Steakums.
different.
It's the old Steakums. It's one location. For Brooklyn, this feasibility study would incorporate what would potentially outbuild be for Brooklyn as well, because that would feed into this system. So it would all be part of one study. Brooklyn wouldn't go out and do a completely separate study because they don't have any of our plant information. So this study has to be done all as one. So they're going to look at what is potential growth opportunity in Brooklyn at the same time when we do this study, because it's a regional plan.
Just those three.
Yes. And it's really for Pomfret, again, it's one location, because the rest of Pomfret is connected to Putnam. Pomfret,
Right.
ran sewer lines and connected the rest of Pomfret into Putnam down the airline trail. But, yep.
So I'm confused. All right, so noted.
Well, that would be planning and zoning, and I don't think that there's been any appetite with that.
Part of this, like you just really concerned me when you just said, so this study, it's gonna determine where we could potentially have commercial industrial.
It's going to look at our existing zoning.
Right, based on our existing zoning.
Right.
So does that mean that things that are zoned for residential right now could be changed over to
No.
commercial okay, so it's.
No, they're only going to look at our existing zoning.
Okay.
This is what we have zoned.
Now, we have around 17,000 people Killingly right now.
Yep.
When you say density, that concerns me, because I think Michelle and I are on the same page here. Like, we have about 8 acres, we're in the woods, I love it. We built there for the privacy.
Sure.
Because we're able to do that, and I just don't wanna see, we're building a bunch of condos and public housing, and it's going to change Killingly to support a workforce that might not come.
Sure.
And then we have a higher population of unemployed, we have more crime, we have, so what would be the stepping, like, how would this happen after this study is done? When we're going to break ground on building additional housing, is this going to be in correlation with the businesses coming in, or are we gonna build a bunch of houses? What are we
Yeah.
looking
So,
at?
if I can start.
We've seen towns do it correctly.
Yeah.
We've seen it done poorly.
So I think the first thing is having the housing plan, having the housing study done to determine what is even the housing inventory, right? What is here, what is available housing stock? Because developers and business owners, right, and potential businesses that are looking to locate here, they need to understand they're potentially going to be bringing employees with them. At the same time, they're going to be looking to hire employees. And if they're looking to hire employees and they want to look, they want to hire, 500 employees, but there's not even that many houses around here, it's really challenging to determine whether or not they're going to be able to get a workforce. So, right, so the first thing is understanding what that is. The second thing is, one of the reasons why we're looking at the Brownsfield locations is because number one, it does remediate that injustice that we have. And number two, those properties were a densely utilized property to begin with, right? And so resituating it and repurposing it into a housing does maximize the use of that, provides available housing that is likely that we know is in an area where is closer to our currently zoned industrial businesses where the jobs are going to be, which provides population density in that form, right? So we're not talking about redeveloping all of our forested lands into population density. We're not talking about that. That's why we're looking at those Brownsfields areas and redeveloping those into that concentrated housing availability to meet those needs of our varying, age groups of our population. So we can generate businesses. Businesses can see and say, oh, I do have the capability of bringing a workforce here and having workforce be here. I also have the availability to have families grow and have, families be able to have available housing in different price categories for them to be able to stay together. So that's why we're looking at the mills. Did that?
Right, and when I say density, it has to do with, when you talk about debt service ratio, when you put a subdivision in, you have the long-term maintenance of that road, and do you ever really capture it on, the tax base? Where these are very underutilized parcels, so you can maximize the benefit and the tax base from that location. And a lot of the infrastructure is currently at the front door. So we're not installing new, it might be, internal upgrades, that kind of thing. So that's when I talk about density. But since the recession, CCOG did a housing feasibility study, and that's why I'm putting it on the SEDS. It's a really important document, and at that time, it came out in 2018 is when they did it. And at that time, they said there was a housing deficit of 3,500 units in New London County. So you can kind of extrapolate what's going on up here, but we never had the study as a region done. And that was before the EB phenomenon, where they got the $2 billion or $10 billion contracts, which they are anticipating in hiring 14,000 more employees. So it's putting pressure on our economy up here, our housing stock. So there is a need for housing, but it goes hand in hand. So we're not going to ask for the sewer feasibility study without doing the housing as well. And that's why that should be a regional study collectively.
What caliber of employee are we looking for to occupy the housing?
You have to look at all levels,
I mean,
because there's all different levels of jobs, and there's all different levels of skills, and there's all different levels of where people are in their employment history. You have some that are at entry level, and they're just starting, and they need a place to begin. And you have those that are seasoned veterans in their careers, and they're 20, 30-plus year, into their careers, and they're looking to relocate into this area. So you're looking at really the whole spectrum of career opportunities, and not just one pocket, but you have everything from executive level to entry level,
see that?
all across the board.
The reason I bring that up, UNFI moved their corporate headquarters to Providence because there wasn't enough artsy type accessibility. Legos is moving out of South Windsor going to Boston because their high-end people don't have the opportunities for I guess it's the recreational, that type of thing, what the arts and entertainment, and high-end restaurants.
They're also
have
looking,
that.
they're also looking for direct connectivity to universities and colleges, and that's why Lego is moving into Boston. They're moving their corporate office, which, so they had already moved a fair amount of their operations out of Connecticut anyway, but they're moving their over to Boston, not just for recreational purposes, but they're also moving to be very directly connected to
Well, it's all-
large amounts of colleges,
Same-
which
same type.
we don't necessarily, we don't have universities located around us, but we can maximize our connection to QVCC. We do have a community college right here. And being able to maximize the connection with QVCC and the pathways that they can afford into our businesses can be a great, and it has been a great asset to our manufacturing businesses and to the growth of those businesses and to the employees that they may have started at an entry level, but now that they've been able to go through a certification class, now they're into a higher level position. And they've been able to make pathways up into in their existing employment because they've been able to access those programs that were
Oh, no, I'm not
they were
saying it's
invested
correct.
in by our businesses. Our manufacturing businesses created that pathway here in the college.
Because even Rogers Corporation, they moved their corporate headquarters out. And back in the 60s, their R&D building was the cat's meow. I happened to drive by there, it's pretty empty now. I mean, when we worked down there, that was critical path, high-end. You knew, you were impressed. Well, I've always lived in that area anyway, but you took it to the next level. You want that here. It was, as a 16-year-old kid, I wanted that here. Because that was something for the community, people to grow on. You were gonna bring in a lot of these outside people. That's why I was throwing that out about the caliber, some people don't want. We have to address a lot of things.
I would like to introduce my neighbor, new neighbor from Rhode Island, just moved to my next house, Patty. Yeah, I invite her come to attend to see the, the House of Town Council and EDC doing here.
Something like that, they also have. They're really cool, they're like indoor gymnasiums.
That's one of the allowable uses for the business park. Yes.
Okay.
And esports is another one you should keep an eye on, where people watch others play video games. It's a huge industry. It is. It is huge. It's a spectator sport.
Also,
My kid would want to be playing.
But you need high-speed broadband.
Actually, that was the one thing I forgot to mention. I don't know if you've heard Frontier's bringing fiber
Yes, so
up
I'll
Lake
be,
Road.
well, I'll actually be giving you an update in my manager's report. I had a meeting with Frontier with regards to their fiber rollout all around town. So they'll be,
Yeah.
they're installing fiber throughout the town.
As
That's
far
huge.
as the Ninja Warrior, Just Performance had
Yep.
a small
Mhm.
Ninja Warrior thing that he was offering to children of all ages.
Yep.
I know my daughter took it, but then he's
Yeah.
also branching out, working with the football team now, working with the youth in calisthenics and other, exercises. So,
Excellent,
yeah.
good to hear.
Yeah, if you haven't
Bill's
been there,
wife
check it
might-
out.
Bill's wife might be at TJ Maxx, so.
Everybody loves TJ Maxx.
No, I
Not
have
you?
to say, and I wasn't beating you guys up, I am just, I was born and raised here. I moved to Hawaii in my early 30s, absolutely loved it, but came back here because I missed the small town.
Yes.
I will never leave our drive. And I know a lot of people, generational, love this town. It's an absolutely beautiful town. We get beat up for stupid, but anyway, it's just, you guys do an amazing job between KBA, Mary, and her whole team. Academic, you guys, you do so much for this community. And I know people question like Good Road, but since I was a little girl, no, you've been here. This town has grown
Yes.
so much in the past 4 years, but it's grown in a good way.
Mhm.
I just don't want to see, because of, we have all this money available, and I know, NECOG, regionalization sometimes scares me, because we lose local control.
Yeah.
So, I have full confidence in all you guys. I just want to make sure, like, this grant, and like, all these grants, there's not strings that are gonna hold us to having to do certain things that we wouldn't have done if it was just the town of Belleville. That's all. But, I mean, I cannot praise you guys enough. You do a
Yeah.
good job.
Think about it, conservation, committee, they do, the local bus tour.
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
gorgeous.
Yeah.
The 39-year first time sit on the bus last year, I say that, wow, I didn't know that.
Mhm.
The one that's a turbine, built 1890 in Killiney. Where's it Killiney? They find it in, I don't know, it's in Chicago or in California. I say that, where's it Killiney? So, a lot of history.
I just wanted to say that I network all over New England, whether it's new developments, whether it's revitalization of old properties, mill sites, brown fields. I can honestly say that there is no town that I've seen so far that has all the people in the right places. So as you say, thank you to us, it's a team effort. All of you do an amazing job. It is really the whole collaboration that we're getting. And when I reach out to other towns and try to get answers, there's nobody that can compare right now. So when we try to change that perspective of Killingly as the town of innovation, I think that we all stand behind it. You don't have
And-
to start crying at once.
Tears of joy.
Yeah, yeah, seriously, no, I just, thank you.
Anyone have anything they want to add? I want to thank every one of you for coming forward. Thank you for all the work that you do. And definitely look forward to working on the vision for the town.
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you.
I really was impressed. This was great. I think we need this. The enthusiasm is what I'd like to see. We want to go. We want to grow this. And the brownfields to make them go. I think that's a big emphasis. And that, those have been there for so many years. And it's nice to see that there's a little flicker of light that something's going to be done.
Oh, it ain't a sprint, it's a marathon.
You know, so we get started on that.
We don't sprint and kill
Oh, yeah,
everything.
it
takes
so
decades
I'm like,
to get anything done.
Hey, I used to make track and field, and now when I go running, I meet people like paramedics. Go running for me.
You keep me employed, it's okay.
I know you want to speed
I appreciate you.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Moving on in the agenda. Next item up, executive session. We have nothing. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made by Mr. Randallski, seconded by Mr. Wood. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? This meeting is adjourned.